I'm going to ask, I'll call the meeting to order and ask John Ports to call the roll, please.
Okay. Vinnie Picciarelli.
Present.
Mindy Mosca. Lindsay.
Present. Sorry.
Dee Dee Galston.
Present.
Heidi Perkins.
Present.
Lori Cable.
Here.
Steve Magoon.
Here.
Tom Tracy.
Here.
Paul Anastasi.
Present.
Kelly Crowbaum. Leo Patterson.
Present.
Mark Sideris.
Present. John Ports.
Present.
Thank you. Actually, I forgot to mention that we are being recorded by Watertown Cable Access, and this meeting is a Zoom meeting, and all of the Zoom information is available on the agenda. And there is also a call-in number and a email address if anyone has questions. And when we get to the public participation, I'm going to ask if the public would please raise your hand, and then we can recognize you at the appropriate time. So the next item on the agenda is meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on the high school building committee meeting minutes?
Just one minor correction. It shows Lori is being absent. I actually had Lori there and she kept dropping on and off throughout the meeting. So I think we should, so I'll make a motion to adopt the meetings amended to show Lori is present.
Is there a second?
Second, Tracy.
Any discussion? John, can we get a roll call, please?
Lindsay Mosca.
Yes.
Dee Dee Galston. Dee Dee. Heidi Perkins.
I'll abstain since I was marked as absent.
Lori Cable.
Yes.
Steve Magoon.
Yes.
Tom Tracy.
Yes.
Paul Anastasi.
Yes.
Kelly Crowbaum. Well, she's not here. Leo Patterson.
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli.
Yes.
Mark Sideris.
Yes, John Ports.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item. We are not going to be doing the invoices tonight, correct, Christy?
Correct. We will present them next month, and we will run a month behind going forward to prevent this from happening again.
Well,
thank you.
Christy, we can also, if we have to have something paid, we can pay it at the elementary school meeting.
Yep, understood. Thank you for that. We'll only use that in a pinch.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the committee's, so the committee understands, we moved meetings because the elementary school invoices were too early, and the same thing is happening with the high school. So we may, in some meetings, have to do overlapping invoices. Okay, so let's get to design options.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the building committee may recall, the last several months, we've been focusing our attention on design option 3D, which involves an academic building on the existing Phillips site, and then a gym auditorium building and a council on aging and district facilities and district administration on the existing high school site. We presented 4 different versions of that option 3D scenario to the building committee a month ago and received a lot of really good feedback. They were all very similar. In fact, these are those versions, versions 1 through 4 of 3D.
Scott, 1 second.
Yes.
John, if you could, and Christy, let the record show that Kelly is present at this time. Sorry, Scott.
No problem. And one of the most significant pieces of feedback we received from the building committee and the community was the desire to reduce the size and scale of the proposed academic building on the Phillips site. You may recall all of the versions we were showing included a 4-story building on the Phillips site. And there was a desire to reduce the height of that and its general mass in any way that we possibly could. both, again, both from the building committee and the community. So we've been working for the past month on doing that, and we've incorporated some of the suggestions made from the building committee. And we've really even come to an option 3D scenario that we very much like. So tonight, we're gonna focus on that primarily, meaning we did go ahead and develop smaller scale 3-story versions of all 4 schemes that we showed the building committee a month ago. But tonight, in the interest of time, and really in the interest of demonstrating the scheme that we feel like has the most potential, the 3D scheme that we feel like has the most potential, we're gonna spend most of our time talking about that scheme. And that's the 3D scheme that we identified as version 4 at the last building committee meeting. Again, when you see it tonight, it'll be less tall. It'll only be 3 stories on the Phillips site. There'll be a lot of other revisions to it, but essentially it's an adjustment to scheme 4 that we presented to the building committee at the last meeting. We'll start with just a general overview of the site and the site circulation, because we've touched on this a number of times, but we'd like to show it very specifically to this scheme. This is clearly the Phillips site. You'll recognize it. You've seen this kind of diagram many times. This is Spring Street, Common Street, located between the Phillips site and the existing high school site. These are both the proposed buildings on those 2 sites. We're not showing the existing building, we're showing the proposed on both sites. The pedestrian bridge over Common Street that we've talked about many times. The idea that Columbia Street would be utilized as a primary parent drop-off area, that Spring Street would have a primary student and or pedestrian entrance to the academic building. The fact that we want to bring a secondary drive between Marshall Street and Common Street on the Phillips site, and that's showing in this location, and that some drop off and pickup could occur there, and a secondary entrance to the building, the academic building, could occur there. The idea that the majority of the parking for the entire campus would be located underneath the proposed gym and auditorium building on the existing high school site. It would start off as some ground level parking coming off of Broadway, and then it would go underneath the building as an underground parking area that is built into the side of the hill that exists coming off of Columbia Street, and again, tucked underneath that building. And then the general circulation in and out of that lot being off of Broadway. And then we've also talked many times about the fact that that underground parking area would likely have an exit point somewhere on Common Street that we haven't specifically identified, but that we know would likely exist. This is showing the very lowest level of that 3D-4 scheme. And we've talked about this in the past, but maybe not in quite as much detail as we're going to tonight. This Phillips site slopes down as you move towards Spring Street, or this left-hand side. So in this version of 3D-4, we're proposing that a couple of spaces required within the building, in this case, administration, the cable studio, and some other program areas, the video production room, could potentially be located at a lower level because the ground is sloping here and tucked underneath what is generally a 3-story academic building. So that's why you're seeing just this level of program at the entry point. And then when we go up a level, we're seeing more or less the main layout of both buildings at that level, meaning an entire story of academic classrooms in the proposed building on the Phillips site. And then you're seeing that lowest level of parking, underground parking on the existing high school site, and then some of the program elements that we would bring over to the existing high school site. Now, as part of this effort of reducing the height and mass of the the building proposed for the Phillips site, the academic building proposed for the Phillips site. We've brought the dining and district kitchen component over to the existing high school site. We think that presents a number of great opportunities for the school and the community. Dining is certainly a very active area for the students. And we think that combining that with the outdoor field area and some outdoor dining opportunities, being able to come across the bridge and have that located as the first major program element once you cross the bridge creates a great opportunity. We've had a chance to review it with the school administration and staff and key leadership. And they feel like it could be a really positive program location for that, for the high school. So you're gonna see as we move up to the other levels, a 2-level dining area located. This is the lowest level, but then above this, another commons or dining area for the students. Again, located directly off that newly created flex field. And then you're gonna see some of the career technical education programs over on this side of the site. We don't know exactly where they'll be placed, and there may be some adjustment to that as we continue to program with the staff and administration at the high school. But we know that some of those programs will be a good fit for this side of the site. So you're seeing some of them start to appear in the lighter teal color on this diagram or on this floor plan. When you go up one more level, you're at the middle academic level or the second floor level on this side. That's where the bridge will connect across. It's also where you come into the auditorium, you come down and connect to the primary entrance to the gym and auditorium. We think we've got a really nice, in this particular scheme, a really nice configuration for the auditorium and the performing arts programs. We think that the bridge coming across in this location and having an oversized corridor that we're referring to as a portion of it as the upper student commons, but really all of it being an active student area for both circulation and socialization overlooking the newly created flex field is just a great program element and a great location for that kind of circulation and that kind of student space on this side of the site. You may recall, even in our community discussions, a number of community members have pointed out that we really need to do something to activate this, you know, the existing high school site and not just the academic side. We think this could go a long way to making this a really active social area for the school, giving the students a little bit of relief from their academic environment for those functions. It also, functionally, it's nice, and I think there were a couple of building committee members that pointed this out, but it's nice to have that dining component on the existing high school site for those times where this will be a public building after hours and weekends that may need that kind of service. It's also nice to have it on this side of the site because it provides the ability to very cleanly lock off the academic building and just utilize this as the kind of community resource that we've talked about. And in this scenario, it would not only include the auditorium, the gymnasium, but also that dining component as part of that community resource. I would point out that in this particular plan, we've shown the Council on Aging in this location. I wouldn't take that too literally. We have, as you may recall, we have a lot of different options for Council on Aging. We sometimes connect it directly to the gym. We sometimes had it located on the end of this particular building. We've even sometimes had it in the front of the building where we're showing district administration. I think we tested it as a somewhat independent building in case that's the desire of the Council on Aging. We know we want it to be part of the campus. We know we want it to be connected, but until we have a chance to chat with the Council on Aging, which we hope to do very soon, we won't really know exactly what their needs are and exactly what their feelings are with regard to arrangement. We know that we want them to have nice access to the flex field, nice views of the field and activity, but we don't know exactly what their placement will be on this site. We were just sort of testing it in that particular location. And then moving up to the third level or the top level of the academic building, we've done a couple of things. In addition to making this only a 3-story building, we've taken the top floor in this location that you see in white and this location that you see in white, and there's no actual building there. We may create an outdoor plaza, we say outdoor learning for students in that area, or it might be potentially be a green roof or something of that nature. It might eventually be photovoltaics that we allow the students more access to as part of science. You know, we're too early on in the process to know what those do or what kind of program that provides, but it does allow us to scale down the building even further on that edge and perhaps provide some kind of academic function for that roof area. This is showing the 3-dimensional perspective aerial that you've seen a number of times for all these different schemes, only with the particular refinements of this scheme. Because there was a request from the community and the building committee, one thing we've done is we've ghosted in light orange the existing high school building, so you can get a sense of its mass on the site versus this newly proposed building. And you can see that the new area, the new open space that's created is back in that flex field zone where currently the existing building goes all the way to the property line and really fills up the entire site. You can see where the new building pulls back from that and creates that greener open space. And then this gives you a sense of the existing Phillips building, existing Council on Aging facilities, and then the fact that we are doing a larger program on this site than the current site, even though we feel like it looks much better scaled down to 3 stories on this site. We're going to show that in some of the perspectives. This is the aerial from the opposite side. And the real advantage of this image is to just demonstrate that concept that I was speaking to earlier, where we've got the bridge coming across, we've got an upper commons and a lower commons area for student dining, and then we've got that hallway that's coming along the back of the building with lots of transparency, so that as that circulation is taking place by students, you can imagine tables, dining opportunities, socialization opportunities overlooking that field area and the activity associated with that. This is showing a view that you've seen before, essentially just from Mount Auburn Street looking down Common Street. This particular view, although it shows that the 3-story proposed building on the Phillips site is much more in keeping with the scale of the adjacent building than the 4-story scheme was, we have some other diagrams that really demonstrate that lowered height much better. Here, for example, we're showing as if you're coming down Common Street, passing underneath the bridge, and we've ghosted in the prior 4-story building against this currently proposed 3-story scheme. And again, it's 3 stories for the majority of the building. It does have a small level of administration tucked in underneath because the site is dropping off there, but a full story shorter than the prior proposed building on that site. And then this is showing a view that we've seen before, with looking down Columbia Street at the Auditorium and Performing Arts building as that wraps around the curve on Common Street and then the bridge. This is showing the view directly down Robbins Road. This hasn't changed much from what you previously saw, just because it's still a 2-story building essentially along Columbia as it was in the prior scheme. We have done some work to bring the entry elevation of this lobby down more closely to align with street level, so the height differential is not as much. And then this is showing, and this is quite dramatic, as you're looking up Marshall Street, at the corner of Marshall and Spring, where the 2 residential buildings exist, it's showing the difference in the prior 4-story scheme that's ghosted in the background, and then the newly proposed 3-story scheme, and how that scheme steps down an additional story along the back of the building for those areas that I was pointing out that could become outdoor green space for the students or science space for the students. This is showing that very active circulation corridor that I was pointing to earlier, with dining on this end after you come across the bridge, dining occurring on this end, and then that continued circulation with, again, that might ultimately have tables and seating for students to socialize in, and then their view out over the flex field and the activity there. As always, I want to put a disclaimer on all of these images and say the windows, the size, the scale of the windows, their location, the aesthetics, if you will, the architecture is not intended to represent what the building would look like. It's simply to give you size and scale and massing. We haven't begun the exercise of determining exactly what the aesthetic of the building would be or what the materials would be. And this is a great two-dimensional image that shows the height differential between the prior proposed building and this 3-story building. And we're looking at a slice right down Common Street, looking back at the Phillips site. So you can see previously the red dotted line represents the 4-story building that we were showing a month ago. And then this elevation clearly represents the reduction in the 3-story building along Common Street, which we think is nicely scaled now with the existing buildings and the surrounding neighborhood. And then this is a slice along both Spring Street and Common Street, where we're looking at what would be a primary entrance facade to that academic building. And then we're seeing the bridge, and then we're seeing, if you were to move up along Columbia, the auditorium and gymnasium building, with the most important element being, again, this red dotted line that shows how much we've scaled down the proposed building for the Phillips site, so much so that the buildings behind it come into context as higher elements. And then this is on Marshall Street, where we've just sliced right through the center line of Marshall Street. And it shows how Marshall Street drops off as it moves towards Spring Street. It also demonstrates the scale of the residential buildings on the corner of Marshall and Spring Street, as well as the residential buildings on the higher part of Marshall. And then the real substantial adjustment being the reduction in size of the overall height of the proposed building on the Phillips site. A lot of the other, and we included in the building committee's packet, as well as this presentation for community viewing, all of the other schemes where we have reduced the height from 4 stories to 3 stories. And we've included those in the information. We're not going to go through them in detail tonight because this 3D-4 is the option that we think does a lot of things, although again, all of them are very similar, does a lot of things to really start to pull the program elements to the right location and make a lot of sense. But we do have all of those other prior options and for the building committee to take a look at as you wish on your own time. All the same diagrams that we just went through on the 3D-4 scenario, but it might be a good time for us to just pause and respond, Mr. Chairman, to any questions regarding the revised 3D scheme that we're presenting as our preferred 3D scenario.
Thank you. Yes, we're going to, questions are first going to come from the committee. So if anyone on the committee has a question, please raise your hand. I see Lindsay first. Lindsay.
I'm quick. I actually just have a question. I'm trying to picture, I really like this image, especially that's up, kind of helping me understand how that building has changed. I'm just kind of curious, just if you could talk a little bit about how has the existing site changed in terms of scale? Because to me, I mean, it looks pretty similar, but a lot of programming has been moved over there in terms of like the scale of the building. So I'm just kind of wondering if the existing high school site, like what exactly is different in terms of scale on that? And like, can see the Council on Aging is sort of like peeled out, but is that the only difference? You know, like it feels like it's the same scale on that side, but we clearly have moved a lot of programming. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that.
Sure. I think that there are a couple of things that are also working in our favor that probably make the building look not as big as you might have anticipated by bringing that program over. And I should have mentioned this, but over the last month, simultaneous to us taking a look at reducing the building by 1 story and moving program over, we've also been working with the school administration to take a fresh look at all of the space summary, all the proposed spaces within the building, make sure we haven't missed anything, make sure everything is appropriately sized, but also make sure that there's a so-called right sizing effort to ensure that we don't have too much space in the building. And so there have been some adjustments, both up and down. And I think as we make sure we've got all of the space covered, but I think the net result is some movement down. So that's also helped us make this building slightly smaller on this site. But the dining and those components have moved over and really have only taken up slightly more space along the flex field. So what we have is a slight but not significant reduction in the flex field as a result of bringing those program elements over.
Steve Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, I really appreciate your efforts. I continue to be amazed at how you come up with a design and then, you know, we come up with comments that are pretty dramatic in terms of what we ask you to do, and you find a way to accommodate that. I think it's a dramatic difference to lower the academic building from 4 stories to 3. You know, I think that really does a tremendous amount to limit the impact on that residential area and that historic district. So I appreciate that. One other question I had, you know, as you've shown the Council on Aging kind of located off to the side, I think there's some advantages to that. One of the things that you know, questions it raises for me is the access to the, you know, gym, and one of the things that they have advantage of at the current site is the access to a gym, and you know, the further that they get from that space, I just want to give some thought to that. You know, and you know, there's a variety of uses we have for the gym. And we continue to have competing interests for that, not only the Council on Aging, but recreation, other programming. So if you could speak to that a little bit, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. I think that we very much like providing the Council on Aging with an opportunity to go directly to outdoor space, to have not only outdoor space for recreation, but for some of their other programmatic needs that are outdoor needs that maybe are very much restricted in their current location. Now, having said that, we have to meet with them and talk with them. We haven't had that opportunity and find out exactly what those needs are and get a much better idea of what their program is and the way they would want to look at this site and their relationship on the site and their relationship to the high school. We definitely have the opportunity to even make a move as simple as just moving this building over, and we have schemes that do this, moving this building over so that it directly abuts the high school. In this particular scheme, we're saying, well, if when we chat with Council on Aging, and the way this came up was not anything that the building committee suggested or Council on Aging suggested, but as we were preparing this revised 3D-4 scenario, we have versions where the Council on Aging directly abuts this high school building. But we said, well, what if it turns out they want a little bit of separation, but still want a connection? So we're showing a bridge in the scheme, but we may not want a bridge in the end. We may want to slide this program over, have it directly engage the building. We know we want them to be able to share some of the resources easily. We want to have more conversations with them. So I would say that should resolve itself as we continue to move through the early stages of design, but it still is a little bit fluid.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, follow up with just one quick question. You've also shown the Council on Aging, and I obviously don't want to get too deep into a discussion about the Council on Aging since you haven't even talked with them yet, but you've shown that as a pretty substantial building with 2 floors. Is there also the potential to create some, larger activity space in there that might meet their needs that they use a gym for? Is there that kind of space, do you think, in there, or not really?
Well, typically in the Council on Aging facilities that we've been involved with, their indoor recreation typically, and again, I don't want to jump to any conclusions because we still have to program with them, but typically involves recreational activities like yoga, aerobics, spaces that require, or programs that require smaller space and typically wouldn't be like a full-size gymnasium. So those kinds of spaces, we certainly have incorporated into Council on Aging facilities, this size building, 2-story building, and done so very successfully. The beauty of this potential relationship between Council on Aging and the high school, as you know, is that if they do desire to do something more active or have a larger space available, then access to that second-story walking track and some of those other facilities might be a really strong benefit for some synergy between the 2 facilities.
Kelly.
Good evening. Hi, Scott. Just a couple of questions, 3 to be exact. So just looking at this overall massing, and I am trying to focus on the massing. On this one, what I'm really noticing is that there's 3 components and none of them seem to relate to each other. So you've got the Center of Aging that is kind of set to the side and looks like a little bit of an afterthought. You have the auditorium and athletic building, which has some curves that I see as relating to the sight lines. And then you have the academic building, which is the only relationship it has to the auditorium building is the bridge. And I know that we still have a lot of work to do with the architecture of the buildings, but I think that my ask is just that we decide whether these buildings are going to relate to each other or not. And I don't know if maybe you can speak to your thoughts on this, because right now they don't relate to each other. I'd just be curious to hear why, and just try to understand your thinking behind that.
Sure.
And I think that's everything.
I think your comments are valid and well put. It's something that we're talking about now in the office, and not that we intentionally didn't want them to relate, but we've just been playing with massing and then placing some windows on to give a sense of scale. But our objective has not been relationships between them. And we're kind of talking slightly architectural terms, but for the sake of buildings relating, we're now looking specifically at these facades and determining what the relationship is between them and this auditorium building. We started to look, and not in anything you're seeing, I'm just saying as part of our design process, we've started to look at Columbia Street and the rhythm, height, and relationship of the residential houses along Columbia, and how we want this edge of the building to respond to that. And then we've looked at the relationship of the bridge. In this particular scenario, the bridge just goes across and slams into a mast. That's not resolved architecturally. We're not pretending it is. We're working on what that smooth transition will be and how we make sure that bridge is not just a bridge, but it's a primary spine that runs all the way through the academic core, so that both buildings are tied together from one end all the way through across the bridge and out the other side. So all those things that you're talking about are valid. They're just steps that we haven't gotten to yet and haven't started to talk to the committee about.
Just one last comment, and I apologize, but this is one thing you brought up that I meant to mention is with the bridge. So obviously unresolved, and you're exactly right. It's just kind of slamming into these masses. But I think one thing that you're kind of missing, and you can really see in this overview, is you have the heightened space in the auditorium building that's an entry, and I just feel like the bridge almost wants to cut through that and become the entry to continue that datum line. So you can see it here, and it's hard to describe just looking at a screen, but you have two different angles that are kind of clashing into each other. And I'd almost be curious to see what it looks like as you continue your studies to continue that bridge through the building, and it actually enters through Columbia Street to accept students.
Sure, and I think that I think our intent is that the circulation spine in the academic building combined with the bridge, combined with the continuation of that spine, represents a really clean pathway from Columbia Street all the way through the academic building. And so we do have that in some of our diagrams. It shows up a little bit in a floor plan now, but not fully resolved, because we do want this to also be a transition point for the students, with the two common areas, or the two dining areas located at this knuckle. But we are looking at that. We are definitely looking at those things, and we'll be continuing that conversation. This is intended to get the building committee to a place where they're comfortable that we can place a 3-story building on the Phillips site and place these programs on the existing high school site, and be able to scale with the neighborhood and make those things work. So one step at a time, for sure.
John Ports.
Yeah, just as a quick follow-up, I mean, I do agree the 3 stories on the academic building, I think definitely fits in better with the neighborhood, and also the site as well. It seemed to me to have one building 4 floors and then the other one across the street being, it kind of overwhelmed the other building in some ways, perhaps. But just what you and Kelly are talking about, I don't know and maybe this is something not resolved yet, but you know, the auditorium has this curved nature that has it kind of lining up with the street, and yet the other building, the academic building, is squared off. And I don't know whether that's something that that's fine. It looks okay like that. It looks, I think it goes to the point of trying to kind of have those two buildings fit together. And I don't know exactly what the resolution to that is. I mean, having the auditorium with that curved nature, you know, fits with the street nicely, but then you've got the challenge of, you know, how does that look along with the academic building?
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what Kelly's talking about as well. Yeah. Like, even on Spring Street, we're already studying, and I should point out, we had a chance to tell some of the building committee members at the start of the meeting before we went live, but one of my partners, Jim Jordan, has joined our team over the last month, because he's going to be a big part of helping us move into schematic design. And right now he has the team studying things like the response on Spring Street. And one of the things they're looking at is this building really probably wants to be aligned with Spring Street. So we're doing some study, and right now it's shown in this massing as slightly angled around Spring Street. So we're taking a look at, the design team taking a look at, what does that mean when we align that? And then what is this face, and what is the relationship between this face of the academic building and this face of the auditorium and the fine arts building, and what is the relationship between those two? So all of those are things that that we're definitely taking a look at.
Okay. One other quick question. On the other side, so the parking is completely contained. If you can flip around back to the slide you just had. So on the where the athletic building is, what's the first floor there again? What is the nature of the first floor?
The first floor of
facing the field. What does it look out? Is it you know, you have that nice corridor that you've created, but that's on the second floor, isn't it?
Got it. Yeah, I understand the question.
Oh,
so on that very lowest level,
yep,
we've got the lower level dining area, the kitchen, and then we've got some career technical ed programs. And then this is proposing, and again, it's not intended to be a fully resolved design solution, but an arcade that you could walk along and have some coverage outdoors in this location.
Okay. And so the parking is completely self-contained.
The parking is completely self-contained behind those program spaces.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
So the parking does not daylight on this edge.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could see under this arcade area, you would see that there are actual program spaces for the high school lining that edge.
Okay. Thank you.
Vinny.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I will just say I really like this sort of the respin of this 3D4 with the 3 stories. It really fits so much better. And I really like the comments, you know, Kelly brought up about that central spine. You know, when we looked at this the last time, you know, that central spine from Columbia Street where the entrance to the old high school is, you know, straight through into the new building, I think is a critical element. You know, you got the auditorium and the gym on one side, and then you go across right into the academic building. So I really like that element of it, you know, so I'm very pleased with the way this turned out. I'd like to take one giant step back. So, you know, on Monday night, the Budget and Fiscal Oversight Committee was going over some budgetary things, and one of the placeholders was the reuse of the former police station, which made me take out my notes and go back to the committee report from March 14th, 2017. We met with the school department and Stephen Goon's department and all other departments about the reuse of the former police station. The on-call architect at that time had given us a $4.8 million estimate to renovate the existing police station. They actually recommended, because of the awkwardness of the space, to just tear it down and build a new 3-story office building for about $7 million. We held off on that based on, because we were thinking about this high school project, and we decided to hold off on it until based on the completion of the feasibility study for the new high school. And lo and behold, here we are 3 years later doing the feasibility study for the new high school. So, so this is sort of a lead into, we have 6 acres here at the Phillips School site and the high school site. It is kind of small, 6 acres to build a new high school. We all recognize this, and we've been struggling with trying to fit all the stuff into it. So I understand we're tearing down the Phillips School, which is 3 stories and has 2 floors of administrative offices, as well as the ground floor level. Half of that is being used by facility maintenance. So my question is, with all the struggles we're having with the massing of the building, you know, especially adjacent to the residential areas, with the struggle to fit all the programming that we want to do for our students into 6 acres, and now looking at this with the Council on Aging, I know it's shown as a separate building here is one option. So my question is, why are we trying to put both the district administration and the facilities management back into this high school project? Wouldn't it make sense, since they have, those are both completely unrelated to the programmatic use of the high school for its intended purpose for our students? Why don't we just go back to taking the district administration and the facilities out of this plan and put them where the former police station is? That will help solve some of the massing issues. It'll also take the Council on Aging. And if you look at that, if you go look at the floor plan, I think it was, so if you see here, you see, if you go back to the, one of these floor plans, this whole, in my mind, we're giving some prime real estate to office space here, district administration. Why don't, if we take district administration out, and we take facilities out, I know facilities is a relatively small piece, we could slide the gym over to the west and put the Counseling on Aging back into that main building. So then you get the auditorium, sort of with the commons, then you get the gym, and then you've got the Council on Aging. And I think we could really address some of the massing issues by taking those things out. It also makes it a little bit, right now the Council on Aging seems to be like an afterthought. We're trying to stick it here, there, everywhere. But I like the idea of having just this one building here on the former high school site, be just one sort of uniform thing. And that will also give us the, what I think I heard before, that, the Council on Aging would be on one side of the gym, so they could use the gym when the high school isn't using it. And then it's more integrated. And we had, going back, the reason I brought up the cost, and I understand these were 2017 cost estimates from our on-call architect, $7 million for a 3-story office building, is because we've budgeted $8 to $10 million for district administration in this scheme. And we've also budgeted $2.5 to $3.5 million for facility maintenance, which is about $13 million. If we were to take that, the $7 million for the 3-story building and instead do a 5-story building, because we wanted to move community development planning, all of that out of town hall into there, you could have a 5-story. And the other thing we wanted to do is first, we wanted to have a space for the makerspace hatch for the library. In a 5-story building, we could have half the first floor be makerspace for the library. The other half is maybe facility maintenance with the basement area for storage. You can get maybe the 2nd and 3rd floor for the Department of Community Development Planning and the 4th and 5th floor for the school administration. And it's all in one building. Even if it would have cost double that, instead of $7 million, it would be $14 million. That's actually the money we've budgeted for this project. And what it does is it moves the non-programmatic uses out of this. And again, I understand we're tearing down the Phillips School and the district administration and facility maintenance are there, and we need to find a new home for them. But in my mind, it makes no sense to try to jam them into what is already a constrained site and is really, giving us trouble with massing and sort of the way this building addresses the sort of the adjacent residential areas. So that's, I seem, we seem to have forgotten that kind of got lost in the shuffle somewhere. But I think that could be a lot better solution because we really are trying to plan on reusing the former police station for sort of municipal office space. So why wouldn't it make sense to put the administrative office space? Sorry, that's what I wanted to raise. And I think it would kind of give some sort of relief to this neighborhood in particular, and move the office space to sort of the town hall complex for all of the municipal office spaces. So anyway, I just wanted to raise that as a point for general discussion.
Thank you. Scott, do you want to say anything, or should we move on for other questions?
I would just say that certainly if the if the building committee and the town were in a position to consider that. And we're, you know, we AI3 are not as familiar with the police station building as many others are. So I can't really speak to the fit there, but certainly if the building committee and the town wanted us to take a look at the impact of removing those from the existing high school site and from this campus program, it would be easy to demonstrate, you know, what advantages that might have.
Thank you, Vinny, for your comments. Heidi.
Sorry, I just had questions, Scott, about, and I was always for the walkway, but what would we be required to do during the winter months as far as snow load on the top of that, or ice falling off on the road or anything like that? What is the norm?
In terms of potential snow falling off of it, I mean, it would be no different than an overpass or a typical element that does, does span a roadway. You wouldn't expect any kind of unusual snowfall from it. You would design the roof so that it would hold the snow, even like it would for any kind of building element. So we've never encountered any kind of specific challenges or problems associated with the ice or snow on a bridge.
Dee Dee.
Thank you. So I have two things I'd like to share. The first one would be, I just want to acknowledge that what Scott had said about the fact that we had just a discussion around this in terms of the school department. I think I might have said this in the school building committee meeting about moving dining over, and a little hesitation around whether that would work in terms of, you know, traffic and flow and everything else. But I think that, you know, given some time to really reflect and look at the drawings and look at the new educational programming that we've got on the Phillips administration site, this actually works very well educationally and programmatically. So I know I might have voiced some thoughts about that before, but I just wanted to let the group know that our team, you know, really does support the idea of moving dining over. I think it actually helps in the end, the educational program. And the other point, just, you know, I didn't really anticipate having a conversation around the former police station. I'm, you know, certainly excited to think that it's something to consider. I think that we should, if we're going to go in that direction, I know this is just a preliminary conversation, but, you know, gathering some people together to talk about what might be the best use for the police station would be great. I've always said I'm very flexible. You know, in the end, I'll go wherever it's best. But certainly there are some advantages to having the district administration in the high school building, not so much being in the building, but being close to the high school. And I'll certainly think a lot about that, but it's just something that I'd like to explore in terms of that building and what might be best. And is that, you know, in terms of the school administration, you know, being in the center, just like we're putting the high school in the center, has some benefits for administration, but that's just my thought initially on that.
Thank you. John Ports.
Yeah, I just commenting, I mean, Dee Dee just made some comments there, but, you know, on Vinny's comment, I appreciate that. I think that, you know, kind of looking at the different pieces that we have here and thinking kind of big picture of what fits and what doesn't, and, you know, how do we make all this work? And I mean, an argument could be made along the lines, I think, of what Vinny's saying, but I do think that having the district administration with the superintendent and the other people that are involved there, curriculum folks and all, having them kind of integrated into the educational experience, I think is pretty important. And I think there's some synergies that happen, you know, to be close to the high school, and actually some advantages in being close to even the kind of auditorium space. If you have, you know, all the teachers coming, for example, for some kind of training session, professional development, they often do something like that. So I don't know. I mean, I think I like the way it is, and I think that it's we can look at it, but I think there's having the administration kind of integrated with the educational activities, I think is a plus for the site.
Lindsay.
I promise to be quick. Just wanted to echo what John said. You know, I think that it for the town, it would be really good to look at that police station space, like Vinny said, and figure out which pieces, you know, if any of the programming that we have on this small site would make sense. But I just want to put in a word for, you know, proximity of administration to the educational program in a district as small as Watertown, I think is really important. You know, it's not just the superintendent administration, it's also the business office, it's student services, it's curriculum work. You know, that proximity to the auditorium, I think is really important. You know, I think there's equally good arguments for district administration to remain in the building and for other programming to be in a separate space, you know, with access to the high school building, obviously in non-school hours at different times as a community space. And so, you know, I think there's, it would be a good conversation to have, but I just really want to speak up for the sort of educational purpose of the school building and the school administration being near that.
Thank you. Leo.
Leo, for some reason, you're still muted, even though you're mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
There you go.
Didn't mean to have double mute on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be very quick here. You know, I understand what Vinny is saying about, you know, dealing with a lot of programming and massing. I think, you know, we're still suffering from trying to shove a lot of academic program on a site that's just not quite large enough for it. And the high school site, the current Columbia Street site doesn't look like it's over programmed at all to me. As a matter of fact, it looks like a long bar that really doesn't have much life on it except for district admin. And so I think in that sense, district admin and, you know, the business processes of the school along that street edge, which is a beautiful street edge, needs some vibrancy, or it's just going to be a gym wall and some facilities on the end. The stage from that side is not bringing life to the street. So I think that we could either remove district admin, as Vinny suggested, but then I would say sculpt the stage conditions, sculpt the auditorium, and sculpt the dining on the opposite side to be kind of counterbalancing each other. I don't actually understand the layout of the dining right now. I think that could be more interesting. And I think on the second level, I mean, it's a beautiful kind of feed into the dining from the academic side, but the active corridor to nowhere is a little confusing to me. I think if you want to have, you know, this be an active point area of collection, it should undulate in and out. It should make opportunities for grouping and not just be a long kind of corridor. I know you could do that with furniture solutions too. I guess lastly, I think that this field that we're creating off of the edge of the graveyard is an interesting opportunity for a yard, right? I originally vied to have it along Columbia Street, but this is also an interesting yard. I don't mind the Council on Aging at all as a standalone, so long as it's a safe kind of weather-proof navigation route for those people from the parking garage. I think that's a considerate way of honoring the elderly in this community. But I would say that, you know, this side, what now has an open green space, is going to have absolutely beautiful light. I was really hoping that that would be the long academic bar that was just constantly flooded with light all day. So I would recommend that at the ground level, instead of an overhang or a porte cochere, which, you know, is essentially bringing in shade or sheltering, that we project out or undulate in and out with other programming. There is some interesting vocational programming down there, but I don't understand why those can't be art studios or other things kind of spilling out onto that green space, taking advantage of the light. I see the art studios are currently on the Phillips site at the ground level, pinned between the two academic masses. And so that's a head scratcher for me. Thank you.
Scott, did you have?
I think that's good. I think that's super good feedback. We have a lot of program adjustments we want to make, assuming the building does end up taking these two sites and configuring itself somewhat like this party. Then I think there are a lot of program adjustments, and I think Leo's comments regarding the sunlight and the sun angles on that facade are important to keep in mind, and the program elements that we can pull to that facade are really important. I think on the Columbia Street side, there are also some career technical education programs that are interested in potentially being located there, programs that we might want to put on display, but we would certainly agree that we need to keep that facade active. It is a really important facade, not just to the overall campus, but specifically to Columbia Street in and of itself. So I think those are all good, great comments.
Thank you. Steve Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would agree. I think keeping the Columbia Street side activated is important. Having said that, I wonder if there's any advantage to the district offices not being in the high school, in that they are then not associated with the high school as opposed to the middle school or elementary school. I don't know, but I just kind of throw that out there as a question.
Okay, thank you. Paul Anastasi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking as someone who has run the facilities department from schools, first at the Brown School and then at the high school, there was a portion, and we also ran it out of the East Junior. I would push to have the public facilities, the public buildings department moved away from a school, just for the function of the department. Trucks in and out all the time, deliveries in and out, dodging the students and parent drop-offs and pickups. There's always a cluster of vehicles coming in and out in the facilities department, and it's hard to work around a schedule of the education. So I think it's best for education and for public buildings to be out of a school building. It's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up about the dining and tying that into what Leah was saying about the corridor. Just a thought, would be really nice to have outdoor dining space in that front field, which could also be used by the COA folks if they had dinners or gatherings and they wanted to be outside, and some gardening. But additionally, as we add to potentially our occupational ed programming, I don't even know, I'm throwing this out, unbeknownst to anybody, but in some of the vocational schools, if there's a strong culinary, they actually have a small restaurant that they open to the public. And I'm just throwing this out there, which would also be a benefit to the COA to be able to be close to that. So as we continue with that dining and kitchen space, I don't know if there's going to be any opportunity, and maybe there won't be room, but even if there was just some permanent outdoor dining situation, there would be a nice place for the kids and people who use the facility for other purposes to have some outdoor space for dining or parties or gatherings or cookouts or whatever there may be. So I just wanted to bring that up as a potential use of that space.
Thank you. Scott, did you have a response or anything? Or?
No, I agree. I neglected to mention that outdoor dining is one of the elements that we think would be highly advantageous as a result of the move of the dining space across the existing high school site. We hadn't necessarily thought about connection to the Council on Aging, but we have done, we've certainly been involved in a lot of high schools where their culinary program has controlled and limited, but access to public entities. And sometimes that does involve something like the Council on Aging.
Dee Dee.
Just a quick follow-up to that. Some of the conversations we've been having about our special education programming would be to incorporate some of our transitional training right by that dining space. I hadn't also equally hadn't thought about the Council on Aging, but certainly thought about opportunities for some of our students in our specialized programming to get vocational opportunities through that dining space. Maybe a cafe or a school store that would be connected to it as well. So I like Heidi's thinking, but also remembering that I think we'll also have some work with our special education students in there as well. It's great.
Thank you. Before I open it up to the public, I have a couple of comments. First of all, thank you to Scott and your team for continuing to work with the committee and evolve in an evolving process. I think we're all getting more comfortable with the 3-story building. I was very hesitant about moving the dining across the street. I had concerns about kids having to walk across, have lunch, and walk back and make it to classroom in time. But it sounds like, if having met with Dee Dee and Joel and others, that this will work, which is fine. The other question is, I have to also agree with Leo, where if we're now putting programming across the street, a long corridor over there to me is not the best use of that space. Again, I'm not a professional. It's a personal opinion. I do think that we can do much better than that with that space overlooking that beautiful green area, which will have plenty of sun. So that's just my comment on that. And I know it's very early, but on the rendering coming down Robbins Road, you see this big white, if you go to that slide, and I know it's early and I know we shouldn't be taking too much of this, but all you're seeing is a blank wall. And sure. I don't think that that's a good look coming down Robbins Road. Just my opinion.
Sure, agreed.
Okay, we're going to now open it up to questions from the audience, and then we'll go to some Q&A that have been sent in. We'll start with Susan Jones. Please identify yourself and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Susan Jones, and I live at 24 Broadway Street, essentially where you put the COA building. And I have questions about that siting. It looks like it's very, very close to the property line, maybe even over the property line. It cuts out a lot of light to my house. We have wonderful light right now. I like the design. All of the design looks great, except the COA building looks wrong to me for personal reasons. And then I have other questions about the abutment line that we have with the high school is right by the parking lot, and we're at least 3 to 4 feet lower. And what will happen there in your design? I'm not clear about how that's going to work in my backyard. I guess those are my questions. And I thought Vinny's solution to the COA question sounded interesting to me for very, very selfish reasons.
Sure. Well, we have to appreciate your honesty on that, right? I would just say that because this is a conceptual model that's not even tied to a specific site survey, don't take the specific location of this too literally. Like
it's not in my bedroom.
Yeah, it's not. You're not sitting in the aerobics room at the Council on Aging. we would have to comply with the setbacks, and we would want to, you know, when the design settles down and we start to determine the exact location of that building, exact location of the program, we would want to take a much more detailed look at, I mean, I think as somebody pointed out earlier tonight, we've just put a massing there to give you a sense of the size of it. It may not end up there. It certainly won't look like that. That's just a blank massing. It will respect the setbacks. We would want to take a look at what it would do to an adjacent property. If there is a differential in the elevation and there's a retaining wall there that we have to address, we would certainly address that. We had similar issues on the Conniff Elementary School project that we work with the abutters on. So I would say it's very early, and but your concerns are certainly noted.
Well, every time, I mean, I've been to 2 meetings. I've missed all the other ones, and I gather you did a neighborhood participation questionnaire, which changed the siting on Phillips. I've never been invited to any of that. I hope I'm on the list now, but will someone be coming around and talking to us about what's going to happen, or how are you going to do this? Because, you know, that building that's the COA it gives me a sense of the mass, definitely. And I have to say that it's much too massive.
One of the things—
Not for the COA, for me.
Okay, one of the things I'm going to say is COVID-19 has changed the way we do a lot of things, unfortunately. Typically, right, we would have meetings like this in person. We would have meetings like this at the high school or at one of the other schools. So we will make sure you're notified, but unfortunately, you'll have to come to these meetings right now by Zoom. And we will try to get, as we get further along, we will try to get further into the neighborhood to make sure everybody is aware.
Okay, well, that's what I want. I want to not feel like that we're sort of ignored, and that we have to come and protest instead of participate.
We'll make sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Tom Lewis. Tom Lewis. Okay, we'll go to the next one and we'll come back. Alto Barbara, please identify yourself and your address, please. Barbara. There you go, unmute.
Trying.
There you go.
There, okay, good. So it's Barbara Ruskin, 140 Spring Street. And I would say that we have not gotten any abutter notices, nor have my neighbors, and we are really abutters. And we were—
Barbara, 1 second, please. Oh. We have not sent out any abutter notices to anyone at this point.
How come? That's a big problem, I think. But
okay,
anyway, I'm here, and I appreciate—
Continue with your questions.
I appreciate the discussion, and I do have some comments that I would like to make, and then I'll tell you first the things I really like. And I know this is just a massing thing, but I hated that big round thing on the end of the Spring and Common building, academic building. I think it was this, just being plain here is just so much more peaceful, and it doesn't pretend. I mean, I think the other design, I understand maybe what it was for, but it didn't really hang together. So I think this is better, even though I know it's only a massing design. I just wanted to mention that. But I have to say that we keep talking about the wonderful 3-story building. However, on Spring Street, it is 4 stories, and it would have been 5 stories had we stayed the same. So I am grateful, but I think something has to change. I think that you could easily take, well, if you're taking away the administration that you said might be on that bottom story that looks taller than a regular building floor anyway, as corporate downstairs rooms are. I think that it might solve the problem and that you could go down to 3 stories there. I think that you could, if you can't get rid of the whatever the utility is of that downstairs on Spring Street, that 4th story, why not put it over on Common Street where there are no houses? It wouldn't do anything about the light, about the volume, the feeling. It would be so much better. And I know you can do it because you've done all this other work. That's terrific. By the way, I didn't mention that I love the idea of a bridge. I think the glassy bridge is great. I hope we're going to use a lot of glass in our buildings. But I think that working on the connections and keeping on going is a terrific idea. I think that the entrance on Spring Street, the pedestrian entrance, should be much wider. We are accentuating the height instead of the, the plane, the width plane, if you would. And I think that's really important for there's a whole neighborhood on my side of Spring Street. And somebody was talking about a new member of the team, of the construction team, not being happy that the building, the academic building, is not totally perpendicular to Spring Street. Well, I think that's a relief. And I would like to see some changes made because you've got some, the massing just doesn't do justice to the neighbors on Spring Street and across Spring Street. And I hope you'll work on that. I also worry about these utilities on the roof. And I appreciate that they're set back a little bit, but I think they could be over toward, I guess they're invisible maybe from the street where they are, but probably not from my house and all my neighbors' houses. And I think they could be further back toward maybe the center of the building, toward Common Street. You have to remember that Common Street has no residences over there. But on Spring Street, we have a lot of them. And I won't talk about design. I just thought that I'll just mention that we're accentuating the height instead of the width. I also think that having the indentation for green space on Common might be applied to Spring. Again, nobody lives there. I'm just trying to find on my notes here. The current view of Phillips School, by the way, from my house on Spring Street is really 1 and 2 stories. We are not facing 3 stories and now 4. For us, it's an increase. And I hope that people will think about that. Let's see. Well, I can come back with some more, but I just wanted to ask a specific question about how during construction my house will be protected. There is a single family that turned into a 2-family right on Spring Street, 2 doors up from me. The tile in my shower cracked, the tile on some walls cracked, the tile in some ceiling, plaster in some ceilings cracked. And how will we be protected if this mammoth building is going up right across the street?
Barbara, I'm going to ask that question is going to come at a much later date. This is not the time to talk about protections. We'll be much more detailed when we get to that stage.
Okay, I understand. So maybe Scott could talk to me about the 4 stories on Spring Street and what to do about it. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I think on Spring Street, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of things we want to look at. We can certainly take those comments into consideration when we've got such an elevation change across that site that even if that lower level goes away, we're probably going to need to bring the grade elevation up to the building a bit, because we wouldn't take the other 2/3 of the building and just make that basement space. But we can certainly take all those comments into consideration, take a closer look at the scale and the location, specific location of the residence on Spring Street, and continue to think about that as we actually move into schematic design.
Thank you. Back to Tom Lewis.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have myself unmuted.
Quite all right.
My name is Tom Lewis. I live on Boylston Street on the east side. I'm a senior citizen and use the Council on Aging facilities a great deal. I'm on the board of the Council on Aging, but I'm not a representative of it tonight. But I have a number of comments. First of all, I'm delighted at the engagement of the board or whatever you call yourselves on this planning process, because there are a lot of important issues, and I'm glad that you're taking care of those or considering those issues. Just a couple things on senior citizens. Senior citizens generally don't like to walk great distances or can't walk great distances. And so I couldn't tell from your plans, but as you develop it, there'll need to be a way people can get to all floors of the Council on Aging building without having to use stairs. Just one thing. And then I think the layout of the building, the academic building along Marshall Street particularly, their residences along Marshall Street, predominantly 2 stories high, you know, sloped roofs and all that sort of thing. And the setback's about 15 feet or so from the sidewalk. So I would think that you would want to be somehow in rhythm with that without getting into the details of it all. I'm not suggesting you build a building that's 3 or 4 stories high on Marshall Street or Spring Street for that matter, or Common Street, but just I would raise my hand for asking you to develop the facade of the building in those 3 frontages to kind of be in rhythm with the dance of the street, of the buildings and the heights and so forth. In other words, I think you could extend 2-story high portions closer to Marshall Street, for instance, and make it look better as opposed to a building that's just sort of chucked in there. I think that's pretty much it. I am aware, I'm interested in your question about that sort of program creep of sticking non-academic functions such as district administration into your building. And I know how that happens. Everybody wants to be part of the new building. And I don't have anything to say about that, but I appreciate sometimes it's not always a good idea to put everybody in just because you're building a new building. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scott, did you want to comment or?
No, I think those are all fair comments. We certainly want to take a look at the Marshall Street elevation, and I think it was Leo who pointed out either last meeting or the meeting before that we, you know, right now with a parking lot there, I think it was what, you know, I can't recall the exact term. I don't know if Leo called it an eyesore or a tear in the urban fabric along that edge. But the point is that it's not the best it can be with regard to congruency with the neighborhood along that edge. It's a nice street. It's a one-way street. Sometimes those are particularly nicer because the movement along them is slower and more controlled. We want to be responsive to whatever we do on Marshall Street, on all the street edges, but certainly on the primary residential edges like Spring Street and Marshall Street.
And again, thank you, Tom. To your one point, Scott did mention earlier, the team, the architectural team is going to be meeting at some point very soon with the Council on Aging and the Senior Services Director, Anne Marie Gagnon, who's also with us this evening, to determine their needs and go, you know, to make sure that whatever the seniors are going to need, if this is the site and this is where we're doing it, that their needs are being met as we go through the design process. I'm going to ask Christy to do a couple of the Q&As, and then we'll go back to the public, if you don't mind, Christy.
Not at all.
I know you answered a couple already.
Yes, yep, we answered those live. Thank you. Okay, so starting with Ellen Rothman. What is the 2-story piece that seems to stick out on the Columbia Street side of the building near the admin space? Is it a stairwell? From a design point of view, it looks like a mistake, or is that just a lack of refinement in these drawings? I think when you showed that view coming down Robinson, that was helpful, Scott. I was thinking maybe that might help.
Yeah, I don't want to show that again. It's too off-putting. That facade, we haven't developed anything on it. So as the chairman points out, it's just a blank wall. That's not our intention. We want to develop something on that. I would say don't read too much into the projection that comes out this far. We want to study what the best entry solution is for a building on Columbia Street. This comes very close to Columbia Street. We probably want to pull back a little. We have the stairway there because we do think it might be a good location to have a vertical circulation element. And so we just made a hint or a suggestion of that there, but we don't want to imply that this is our final solution on that entry piece. Again, we haven't even started schematic design yet. We're just looking at conceptual massing.
Great, thank you. Go to the next one, David Stokes. Whether district admin stays in the Columbia Street building, I think that moving the Department of Public Buildings and their corresponding maintenance bays, workshops, and storage to the former police station building might make sense. The next question, Robert Shea, where is the proposed dining space? If you want to show that, Scott.
So in this particular scenario, we are suggesting that there may be 2-level dining. And the reason we're doing that is we do want the opportunity for outdoor dining at this lowest level. And we want to have that component there, but we also think that we might have the opportunity to have some upper level dining as well. We've done this before on a number of schools where in order to cut down on the number of students in any particular area, we spread it out on a couple of different levels. So the dining components are located in that location and then on an upper level potentially in that location.
Thank you. Next, Robert Shea. What are the proposed dimensions of the Council on Aging space? How many square feet? When do the interior design options of the space get proposed, and what is the process for making decisions about that? I think we've touched a little bit on the latter 2 questions, but maybe the first 2, Scott?
Yeah, right now we have an assumed program of about 15,000 square feet, which is approximately double the space that's currently available at the Council on Aging. We don't have any confirmation of that. Again, we'd want to begin conversations with Council on Aging to talk about that. And although we want to refine the exact size of the building and the spaces that are required, it would be well into schematic design next year before we would be talking about the specific interior layout and interior finishes and elevations and what those spaces might look like and those kind of things.
A follow-up was, when will the conversation with COA take place?
Well, I think we want to, as recently as today, I spoke with the chairman about beginning that communication. So I think that we want to start there at the administration level and get some very sort of high level global feedback. And then, as I said, it depends on the level of detail you're talking about, but we'll be working, assuming Council on Aging remains as part of this program, we'll be starting those conversations very soon and then it'll be a continued conversation for the next couple of years as we design this building.
Okay, one more in the chat, Mr. Chairman. So Sharon Schumack, we need more information about the specific activities of the facilities department, especially with regard to the amount of truck traffic that is apparently generated by it. This is of great concern to the neighborhood as well as its impact on users of the COA Senior Center.
Okay, we will take that and get some answers for that as well. Go back to the general public. Angie Canellis.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here and view the renderings. Just a little background information. The green space that we're looking at is quite similar to what we had back in the day. And the green space actually was by what we called the cafeteria. We had doors that opened up onto the green space, and it was a very welcoming site. I just wanted to agree with Councilor Piccirilli's suggestion that the admin space and facility should be considered for an off-site location. I think it's important that we also say a lot about that we also be looking at all aspects that are available within our community, as opposed to attempting to put everything in this one high school campus. We should allow ourselves some breathing room for the growing needs of the high school facility. And also, I know that the Council on Aging is going to be conferred with, but I think it's important to also consider at-grade parking for Council on Aging. As one of the previous speakers had indicated, it's a mobility issue for some of the elders, and accessing the garage may be a little bit more difficult. So, and plus with functions that they have with more seniors coming onto the facility, I think that's something that needs to be reviewed, and I'm sure that the COA will certainly be discussing it. So thank you. Thank you. Anne-Marie Gagnon is here and has raised.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hello. Good evening. It's Anne-Marie Gagnon. I'm the director of the Council on Aging. First, I just want to thank everybody who's working on these, both these projects. I think every time I see these renderings, I'm more impressed, and I think it's going to be just a great win-win for the town. I appreciate everybody's comments, particularly the seniors who have been on the meeting tonight, and particularly to Councilor Canellis' point in terms of parking. I am obviously concerned about that in terms of mobility and whatnot. And I really enjoyed the conversations around shared outdoor space, and particularly about outdoor dining and those types of pieces that we can incorporate into the plan. I think would be a true win-win for both those at the school and at the COA. And I look forward to my talks and the Council on Aging talks with the architects. So thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Dobson.
Sorry, who's muted? Actually, I was going to say a lot of the things that Anne-Marie just said, actually, too. But yeah, with the goal of making it a really vibrant senior center, I really like the idea, too, of the integration of the different ages and services. And Heidi, you had some really good ideas, too, there with a culinary program that could be shared, sort of a shared space. And just like the intergenerational aspect of all this. So I hope you don't take it off the site, because I think I heard you mention that a couple of times. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go back to a couple of the panelists at this point. First, Heidi Perkins.
Thanks, Mark. Just two things. One is on the Council on Aging. I don't know where sort of a bus pickup and drop off. The bus often comes through there either to leave on a trip or if they are bringing people to medical appointments or whatever, and they have bus parking. So I just wanted to remind Scott that there'd probably need to be some kind of a lane there or whatever for people to load or unload. I'm just throwing that out there. And then, we've been talking a lot about the green space, on, yeah, I can't think of the name of it right now, on the main drag there, Common Street. But where that jut out is on Columbia Street, which looks a little bit awkward, and there's green there. And I know right now this rendering is to sort of center, you know, with equal setbacks all around. But it would seem that if more building or the whole building shifting closer to Columbia is green space that really hasn't been identified as necessarily being very useful, and would also make that entry that's going right to the edge of the road not look as awkward. That would give potentially more space either to, you know, have more building space for additional programming and or more green space and or resituate the Council on Aging on that other side of the building. So I'm sure you've thought of that, about that, Scott, and it's just something that it just appears that we're heavily leaning towards using the other side of the building for a lot of different reasons. And there might be some opportunity to bring it closer on Columbia Street to the edge of the road, however setback you need to have, I don't know. Thanks.
Kelly Krobbaum.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one really quick comment, just because some of the rhetoric I'm hearing from the residents is reminding me of some past conversations we've had about communications with regards to the elementary schools. And I just want to make sure that we're getting in front of it and not making the same mistake twice. Just making sure that we're getting in front of the residents and that they're feeling included and not in the dark, because I know that that was a lesson that we learned early on in the elementary school project. So just want to hear a little bit more about where we stand with the communications team. I know we talked about it, but I just haven't seen a lot of movement with that. And then moreover, I know Christy has done a great job getting us a website that she's keeping updated. And I just think it might be worthwhile a shout out and links that we can share with the community, just so that they know that there is a landing page that they can go to that has a lot of this information, so that they can get updated if this is their first time joining.
I will say I got an email from one of the communications subcommittee members while we were during the meeting. And, you know, I did speak to Christy earlier. We do have to reinstitute this more meetings with the communication subcommittee to address all of these issues. And I'm not going to use it as an excuse, but we continue, because of COVID, a lot of things have somehow fallen behind. That's not an excuse, but Christy has done a great job, and Tim have done a great job getting the website going. So we're going to get the communication subcommittee to start working with them and getting more reach out to the neighbors. Thank you. Elodia Thomas.
Thank you, Mark. This is so exciting. I'm absolutely thrilled. So Scott and building committee, thank you for pushing the envelope. I love the engagement area that's there. I want to echo Leo Patterson's comment that why not move all the arts programs over to this area? The light will be fantastic. And it would, you know, it's wonderful for the Council on Aging. They have a lot of painting programs, etc. It's wonderful, the creatives. I love Heidi's idea of perhaps some kind of dining experience that can be done for students. This space can become the hub of this community. It can be absolutely stunning. Going back to one of my neighbors, Barbara Ruskin, I agree with her and the concerns of that. I live at 67 Marion Road. It still looks like a 4-story building from Spring Street, and it's a little bit overwhelming. I also want to echo the comments of Ellen Rothman and my town council president with regard to the entrance that I call it the Darth Vader entrance on Columbia Street. It doesn't embrace you at all, it blocks you. And I do believe that both entrances could be much more creative, much more sculptural, much more embracing of the community. So Scott, I've seen so many different things that you've done. So I know this is just massing, but that I agree, that massing is just, it doesn't fit. I noticed that the early childhood program was on the gym side, for lack of a better word. Why wouldn't that be brought to the academic side where it's a little bit safer probably? And again, move the arts. And arts are not just the painting arts, but it's also the creative arts in terms of engineering and experimentation. So I'd really love to see that. I'm looking through all my comments. Again, I love Kelly's comments about how the big buildings echo each other. I'd like to echo Steve Magoon, our Assistant Town Manager and Director of Community Planning and Placement, Development and Planning, with his thing about the access to the gym and the perception that the school admin is only involved with the high school. That is reverberating around from people that I speak with. And I think when they become part of the central administration in down near Town Hall, it would be much better, because I'm going to come to costs down the road. Paul Anastasia addressed again getting the public facilities away for noise, for dirt, etc. And I'm trying to think of anything else I've seen. My big issue in this whole thing, we are living through COVID. We don't know when it's going to end. There have been huge repercussions for many people in terms of their finances. Certainly people have reached out to me about concerns that they have, and having just done some repairs on my own house, the supply chain is definitely affected. Building costs are going up, appliance costs are going up. So lots of numbers are going to be shifting. And I know we talked about this way in the beginning when we were talking about the elementary schools, but money is important. I have no idea what we think this debt exclusion is going to be. We absolutely need this high school. And by separating out the facilities portion and the central administration offices, we are really focusing on the school. And I happen to have a really smart town councilor who I'm in total agreement on these issues. Let's really think what we're doing in our town. And that police station has been sitting there for years now, empty. And when Vinny talked about, what it would cost to renovate, tear down, build a new story building that would really meet so many other things that are needed in this town, that's really smart planning in my book. I think it's a brilliant idea. We spent a lot of money renovating, the swing space that we have right now. So we can use that. I assume that we could continue to use that swing space. But if we're going to pass the school debt exclusion, let's really focus on what we need for these schools and the COA. And I think we've got something that can really work. These are my thoughts. I have plenty more, but I'm going to stop now, Mark, and thank you very much. But I know it's just Massing. I know how talented Scott is because I've looked at so many of his projects. I find this extremely exciting. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for understanding that we're not designing anything here. And I'm sure the AI3 team will design the beautiful entrances that has been mentioned here more than once. I can almost guarantee you that. We don't have any more questions or comments. What I'd like to do at this point, we're going to have another meeting because the time is running short. I think, unless there's a comment otherwise, I think what I want to do is have the team go back, take these comments tonight and focus on what was said here on this particular option, unless the committee thinks that this is not an option that we should be discussing. To Councilor Picciarelli's point about the police station, that's a conversation that we also have to have with the town, which we will have to facilitate in the meantime, because that's a totally different, that's just separate and distinct completely from this process. So is there anybody that feels that this is not an option that we want to work with? Okay, it looks like everybody's in agreement. So what I'm going to suggest is sometime, probably the last week of the month, we're going to have to schedule another meeting to discuss further what we talked about tonight. And I see John Ports has raised his hand. John.
Unmute yourself.
John?
You asked whether anybody had any questions about the option, and what you were referring to option 3D4?
What Scott has determined to be their proposed preferred option.
Okay, that's fine. I just wasn't clear what you were referring to.
Yes, Kelly.
Just a question because I missed the last meeting. So are we not looking at like 3D1, to 3 anymore, and now it's just this one for 3D. There's just so many options. It's hard to keep track of them all.
Well, this is what was presented tonight as AI3's preferred. We can go back to anyone that the committee wants to go back to.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I know I missed the last meeting, so I apologize for that. But Scott, I just, going back and looking at the presentation, 3D2, I think is a really strong option. I always have concerns about curves and buildings. I think they get easily outdated and a little bit too traditional for kind of the 21st century learning that we're going towards. So I know we're running out of time. I want to respect everyone's time, but I do want to challenge the committee that we try to think forward in some of these design concepts. I know we're at Massing. I know we have a really long road ahead of us when it comes to architecture. And I know we really need to get the programming figured out first, but I do want to challenge the town and the people listening that, that we don't get stuck in the traditional rut, and we do try to just get a little bit out of our comfort zone, knowing that this building is going to be around for a really long time. And so, Scott, just going to that 3D2 scheme, and granted, I have a little bit more modern aesthetic naturally that I'm drawn to, but it has that bridge concept we were talking about where it really is driving its way through the entire building and connecting the two portions and masses, and they're really connecting and talking to one another. I think that programmatically we can talk about that, but I'm just focusing on massing and looking at the auditorium gym portion of the building and how it speaks to the neighbor next door. So just something I wanted to bring up quickly.
No problem. So is everybody comfortable with this kind of approach, basically, and incorporating some of Kelly's comments? That's basically then what we'll do. I will have a meeting with the architectural team and the project management team over the next couple of days, and we will figure out how we're going to approach the next meeting and what we want to try to achieve. There's one more question from an attendee. Bob Shea. Please identify yourself and give us your address, please.
Unmuted.
Bob?
Yep, here I am. Bob Shea, 139 Russell Avenue. Just a quick question. Where can the 3D4 design that was presented at this session be found online so that we can take it to some other people to take a look at?
Could I take that, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Kristen.
So actually I queued this up and I was gonna use this moment with Kelly's suggestion. So if I think I can share my screen if you don't mind. I'd like people to see this landing page and just talk through it. And Bob, this will show you where you can see quite a lot of things. So
great.
Okay. All right, so when I type in into Google Watertown building for the future, this is where you land. So like instead of trying to remember a website, just Watertown building for the future, and you land here. So there's a link that goes directly to the school building committee meetings. And the agenda is posted as well as the presentation. And you can go back and look at the past presentations as well here and the community forums.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then let me just go back to that page because I do want to just also point out that there's the elementary school project homepage link or website link, and also our high school project link. So we use this homepage to update when there's going to be community forums. You can see we have milestone dates here. It always says when the next building committee meeting is. It's also a place where you can contact us for Q&A. So again, not needing to look for email addresses. We're going to keep track of questions that come in this way. So if you go to contact us, there's an email address here, highschoolproject@watertown.ma.us. And that's where this comes to several of us with the project. And we answer everything. So
can we get on a list of notifications for future meetings just to be notified with the link?
Bob, I'm going to suggest you go to Notify Me on the town's website, and that's how you can get notified.
Okay.
All the other meetings that people have throughout the community.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. So hopefully that's helpful. Just Watertown Building for the Future. It gets you to that landing page and you can get to a lot of different places.
Great, thank you.
Great. Okay, back to our agenda, Christy or Scott.
I think that, let's see if I can share my, I think that concludes everything that we had, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure. Oh, I'm sorry. Christy had her schedule. Compass Project Management, I think, had their schedule at the end of this. Let me just get to it. Bear with me.
You went by. Yep, there you go. Thank you. One more. I just like to keep everybody updated. So we're keeping this updated. It is on the website also. We are closing in on the end of our analyzing of shortlist options, as you know. And so that's the month of November. We are looking for a vote in December to submit our preferred schematic report to the MSBA by their deadline of December 29th to make the February board meeting, MSBA board meeting. So just keeping us on track there. We've also noted here, we would like a 5th community forum. We'd like to squeeze another community forum in, whether it be November or December, based on the chairman's note just a few minutes ago, or comments about us having another meeting. So possibly it would be more like early December for a community forum, but we will make sure that everybody is aware of that. So that's really the main dates and updates here. I just wanted to keep us, everyone updated.
Christy, if I could just add, because I know, and I think it's fantastic that we've got some new attendees and participants, it sounds like tonight. And just for clarification to those folks who have not attended the meetings in the past, the building committees meetings happen consistently and are completely public, open forums for the kind of discussion you heard tonight. The community forums are just an additional forum, an additional opportunity for anybody in the community to be able to recap and hear what the building committee's been hearing at their meetings. So it is an attempt to try to reach out and capture people that maybe aren't able to attend every building committee meeting. So that's what those are about.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we had there.
Slide.
Yep,
Kristen?
so thank you. So just we're using this as an opportunity to acknowledge some from meeting to meeting when we are receiving communications from different community members, whether it be through the website I just showed you or via email. So since our last meeting, we've received 2 emails from specific town committees, I'll call it. So one was Watertown Faces Climate Change, and the other is the PED and
Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee.
Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. We received a memo from them, essentially just making us aware of what their focus is and how they could be engaged in the process. And so we explained that would be further down the line.
And the committee has seen both of those letters.
Yep, thank you. And then one more, which we actually addressed, which was one of the neighbors who's joined us today had noted not being on the email list. And so we are, as Chairman said, working on creating a list that will be part of this communications plan for notifications. But do check the website. I have to keep saying it. If you have the means, Watertown Building for the Future and going to the high school site, we do keep it updated.
And sign up for Notify Me and you'll find out when we're posting meetings and see the presentations.
So, all right, a few things for announcements then. We wanted everyone to know that we are on the agenda for the Watertown Historical Commission on November 12th. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we're planning the next community forum. We had noted here potentially the week of November 30th. Likely that will be another school building committee meeting, but we'll keep everyone updated on that. And then lastly, we are looking ahead towards having a presentation to the school committee potentially in December.
And again, that's tentative. If we don't have a preferred designed to show the school committee we won't be going in front of them in December.
Okay.
There's one more answer in the Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Very good, thank you. Lodia Thomas, when will we receive updated square footage specs? What is the recalibrated building per square foot estimate given supply chain issues? Great job, Christy, thank you.
Scott, can you do the one about the square footage?
Sure. I think that we're not ready to go. We have a recalibrated square footage. We're very excited about the adjustments and improvements that have been made to the program, and still at the same time being able to find some areas where we had program space that was not required. And so there is going to be a reduction. I just don't think we're ready to go public with that. I think probably by the time the next building committee rolls around, our goal would be to present a revised space summary to the building committee and report on the outcome of those adjustments.
And I would just add, we absolutely are tracking these supply chain issues. As a company, AI3, Compass, we are keeping our finger on the pulse of these things like lumber, for example, that definitely what we think is peaked and probably gonna square off, but something that as we continue estimating, these things are always accounted for and noted and escalation and all those proper things.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, Magoon.
Can I get a roll call, please, John?
Got on mute, John.
John, can I get a motion, a roll call, please?
Sorry. Dee Dee Galston?
Yes.
Heidi Perkins?
Yes.
Lori Cable?
Yes.
Steve Magoon?
Yes.
Tom Tracy?
Yes.
Paul Anastasi?
Yes.
Kelly Crowbaum?
Yes.
Leo Patterson?
Yes.
Lindsay Mosca?
Yes.
Vinnie Picciarelli?
Yes.
Mark Sideris?
Yes, John Ports?
Yes.
Thank you all. Great job tonight. Appreciate your efforts for everybody's comments too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for sharing.
Well.